welcome to Policy and Politics with me, Tarun Nangya. Every country ensures that it is self-sufficient in essential commodities. Many countries naturally are not blessed with such things, but India, thankfully, is blessed with a land where we have a lot of potential for agriculture. Recently, Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke about National Edible Oil Mission, which is oil palm, and he said that Northeast will be an area where a lot of palm cultivation would be done. So India, which loses about 40,000 crores each year as in foreign exchange because we import palm oil, that dependency to foreign countries can be reduced. It is an important initiative of the government of India, which has an outlay of about 11,000 plus crores over a period of 5 years. It started in 2021. And from the point of view of the government's agenda of Aatmanirbhar Bharat, which is in essential in English, self-reliant India, this is an important program. Why food security or oil security in this case of edible oils is necessary for India, how India will save money, what is the government agenda, how the government's objective was the development of the Northeast will also be fulfilled via this, and why palm oil has been taken up as a program by the Ministry of Agriculture. All of this and more today with a panel of experts. I would like to welcome on the show today Mr. Siraj Hussain, who's served as the former Union Secretary in the Ministry of Food Processing Industries and the Ministry of Agriculture. He's an IS officer. Good to see you, sir, and looking forward to some interesting insights from you today on the show. We have with us Mr. Atul Chaturvedi. He is the chairman of Asian Palm Oil Alliance, but he's a veteran industry figure. He's the executive chairman currently of Sri Renuka Sugar, which, as you all know, is one of India's leading and most well-known sugar producing companies. Also, formerly for about 2.5 decades, he was with the Adani Group and served as the CEO for Adani Agro. So an industry veteran on the panel today. Good to see you and looking forward to some very interesting insights and facts and figures from you as well. We have with us Nilanjana Singh, who's a wellness consultant, dietitian, author, and a nutritionist, where she's worked for the past 3 decades in this sector, and she would know the nitty-gritties of every edible component that we as a population consume. And it is very important to have her opinion also on the government's a very important program, which is National Edible Oil Mission, that is being taken up with the government with a certain kind of urgency and speed to ensure self-sufficiency. Good to see you, Nilanjana, and thank you, and look forward to your inputs. At the outset, may I request Mr. Atul Chaturvedi to lay the ground of this issue in about 2-3 minutes, and then we go to Mr. Hussain for the policy talk from the ministry angle. Over to you, Mr. Chaturvedi.
No, thank you, Tarun, for having me on your show. But you've probably spelt out whatever needed to be spelt out. In India, I think in the last couple of decades, we have neglected the oilseed sector big time, with the result that our edible oil security has been heavily compromised. Now you have a situation where the country requires, or country's current consumption level is close to about 25 million tons. And out of that 25 million tons, 9 to 9.5 million tons happens to be palm. So if you really look at it, palm contributes something like about 38% of our edible oil consumption. So we have definitely neglected this sector, and it is good that at least our current Prime Minister, who's been a big votary of Aatmanirbhar, he took the final plunge, and in 2021, this national mission on edible oils and palm, specifically palm, was actually started with about 11,000 odd crores. So, and I think what we are seeing is that the results have started coming in, but I think a lot more still needs to be done. Whether we like it or not, palm is the one commodity which can probably help India reduce its dependence on the world's, and basically Malaysia or Indonesia for that matter, and now Thailand as well. So I think it's a right decision. And we've also been pressurizing the government that not only palm, but you also need to expand this area into other oilseeds as well. And I'm happy to say that this budget has allocated a sizable amount for other oilseeds as well. So we are on the right track. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for that opening comment. Now, policies are, in a sense, designed, developed in the Secretariat. It is the IS officers, along with aid and advice of other wise men in the country. They make policies sitting in the Secretariat in Delhi, but they are implemented on the ground in the states. Something like agriculture, you cannot do with the support of the state governments. And that is why a mission like the National Edible Oil Mission will need a lot of support of the states. How has the work going on in the past 3 years? Why oil palm? Why the Prime Minister spoke about this with a special focus on Northeast? All of this and more, we will request from Mr. Siraj Hussain, who's former Union Agriculture Secretary. He will share with all of us. Over to you, sir.
So on a per hectare basis, the yield of palm oil is much higher than other edible oils. So if you compare the yield with mustard or groundnut or soybean, etc., on a per hectare basis, you get much more oil. And therefore, the government thinks, and rightly so, that it is possible to produce much more oil from a limited area under oil palm. Now, you have mentioned that the government has prioritized the domestic production of palm oil by giving various incentives in different states. So Andhra Pradesh has been quite successful in incentivizing the production of oil palm by farmers. Of course, later on we will discuss the income to farmers from oil palm as compared to other crops. In case of Northeast, I'm not very sure how it is proceeding, because in Northeast the connectivity, road connectivity is not very good. And till about 2 years back, the oil palm FFB, the bunches were being taken to Andhra Pradesh for processing. Of course, recently, in the last 2 years, some processing units have come up. But I think it is early days. And as we know, the oil palm cultivation requires a lot of water. And in the last few years, we have seen that the monsoon rains in Northeast have been going down. So there are challenges. So far, it has been quite successful in Andhra Pradesh, to a great extent in Telangana, but it has not taken off in other states. So going forward, maybe if we have time, we will discuss the challenges in other states.
Thank you for the opening comment. We'll go to Ma'am Nilanjana Singh for her opening comment, which specifically why government's focus. There are many oils. There is sunflower oil. There are other kinds of oils, that so soybean oil. But if the government has dedicated a whole program for oil palm, there would be a certain importance attached to that particular produce. Over to you, ma'am, for your opening comment. I think we'll quickly go to Mr. Atul Chaturvedi for his comment on this. Mr. Chaturvedi, I would like to get you in quickly on one quick comment. That while you go about producing oil palm in the states, what is the kind of aid that the states are getting from the government at the center so that you incentivize this kind of production?
No, to the best of my knowledge, about the 11,000 crores, which has been over a period of 5 years been allocated for palm, I think about 8,800 crores out of that is the center's preserve. Center is going to be contributing that, and the balance is going to be contributed by roughly 2,200 odd crores. So that has to be contributed by the states. But let me come to your other point. Siraj Bhai was talking about Northeast being a problem area. But if you look at the palm cultivation in our country at this point of time, about 75% is actually contributed by Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, and Telangana. So that is, or Karnataka for that matter, but that is the area, and that is because palm grows the best 10 degrees upper or lower of the equator, where the rains are adequate. So I think this area is perfect for palm. But as far as Northeast is concerned, the issues in terms of the terrain it definitely poses a big challenge. Yep.
Okay, point well taken on the issue of nutrition and why the government chose oil palm. We'll go to Nilanjana Singh. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Tarun, for that question. It's important to highlight this because palm oil has got the bad rap all the time, and it's I think the right time when we are facing this climate crisis and food insecurity. This is the right time to talk about palm oil because it's a very versatile oil. It is economical. Sometimes we feel that something that's economical is not always good. So I think that connection has been made with palm oil, that because it's economical, it's probably not a good oil and more expensive oils are better. So this versatile oil and how it is used in the food industry, it is very versatile. So it can be used very well without having any effects like trans fats. These fats have bad effects and they are used in the food industry. But palm oil does not need to go through that hydrogenation. And so it can be a very good apt oil to be used in the food industry. It is already being used, but I see a lot more of it being used later on because our dependence on convenience foods and other things is only growing. But what I want to put in perspective here is that it's very difficult to find one complete oil that fits the bill. Usually for humans, you need different kinds of fatty acids. And we in our practice tell people to have a combination of oils. So whether it is palm oil, if it's palm oil, you have to combine with another oil which has a different fatty acid profile which the body needs. So if you have excess of anything, that's bad. So that I know that balanced diets don't sell, but that is the way to eat. And when you have palm oil as a part of that balanced diet, where you know that you can have 10% of the calorie intake, the fat intake from saturated fats. And nowhere in any recommendation do they say that saturated fats are not needed. They are needed, but in limited amount. So with this kind of crop, which gives high yield, I think taking care of food security, palm oil is definitely something that can be incorporated into our daily diets. But of course, there are certain caveats and there are ways to go about it, which I think general awareness about it can help.
Point well taken. I'll go to Mr. Chaturvedi. Then the Prime Minister Narendra Modi earlier this year visited Arunachal Pradesh. It was informed to all via the media that out of the budget of 11,040 crores, 5,870 crores is going to the northeastern region. And for the northeastern region, a special assistance of 1 lakh per hectare will be given for planting palm oil. Do you think government is doing this with some strategy because you understand these things much better than us? Could you share why half of the budget is going to Northeast region?
No, it definitely makes a lot of sense because palm has been one oil which has actually changed the profile of Malaysians and Indonesians. Small farmers in these countries have actually benefited big time. And Northeast, whether we like it or not, over the years was probably feeling that they are a neglected part of India. And with this pumping in of money over a period of next 4 or 5 years, I think definitely should help. But one challenge which is there, and Siraj Saab also referred to that, is you need to incentivize industry to come in that area. So if the farmers are going to be producing fresh fruit bunches and that same thing has to be transported all the way to Andhra Pradesh, it doesn't make sense. So it's important that the industry should be incentivized to put up in that. And my take is that once the industry comes, the farmers have a ready market available and it will actually enthuse them big time. And I'm sure if palm oil succeeds in Northeast, it can actually change the economic face of that region. So it's important because in rural Andhra Pradesh and Telangana and all, it has actually changed big time. And I was pleasantly surprised that way back in the late 1960s or somewhere around that, Malaysia, the poverty level was something like 50%. And now that poverty level is down to about 5%. And a lot of that is palm oil's contribution.
Two point, the government is giving 290,000 crores to each farmer for purchasing harvesting tools. Also, the data with me says that a special assistance of 5 crore is being allocated for processing mills of oil palm in the northeastern region. As of now, 3 months ago, the Prime Minister visited Arunachal Pradesh. He said it was informed to the media that 10 oil processing mills are coming up in northeastern region. Do you think this kind of money makes a difference, or more money would be needed?
I don't think this is just in Hindi we say that this is something like the oont ke muh mein jeera. So it's way too short. And in fact, you must understand that if you produce in Arunachal Pradesh or Northeast, the consumption is not all that great in that region because it's much more sparsely populated. And the oil needs to come back to Assam or to West Bengal. So unless and until you give suitable freight subsidy for the producers, all that, and if somebody is going to be pumping in money in that area, so he's not doing a CSR activity. Government might do the CSR, but it has to be a win-win situation. So my take is that industry needs to be suitably incentivized for palm to really become big time, because the challenges even for the industry in that region are also quite great.
Point very well taken. Very quickly, one intervention I'll request from Mr. Siraj Hussain. There was this problem between India and Malaysia during Muhammad Mahathir's time when there was a blockade sort of. We had stopped importing palm oil, but India needed oil for its security. Do you think these kind of concerns have caused India to ensure that it raises its own production to a certain level, so the dependency at least on other nations is reduced significantly? Do you think this is a concern, that oil dependency is a big issue? Of course, we cannot help with fuel, which we use to for everything like our vehicles, but for edible oil, do you think that was the trigger sort of, or this was always in the planning since you were there?
No, that was not the trigger. In fact, oil palm has been, and other edible oils have been on the government's priority item for decades. In fact, at one point of time, India had become self-sufficient in oil. I would like your viewers to do a Google search and read my article on that subject. India did become self-sufficient, but there is a story behind that. What happened? What did we do to mustard, because of which the production of mustard came down? So Mr. Chaturvedi is a veteran of that field. Maybe when you have a discussion, some other time, he will throw more light on that. I do not think diplomatic considerations weighed in favor of this package which has been launched by the government. Actually, the industry and those who are concerned with edible oil security of India have been asking the government for a long time to promote the cultivation of edible oil so that the domestic farmers receive a better price for cultivation of edible oil seeds. And there is diversity of crop cultivation, because right now what is happening is that there is a lot of paddy growing areas where oil palm and other edible oils can be a good substitute. Now, having said this, maybe you can ask this question to Mr. Chaturvedi. Our dependence on edible oils is not going to reduce anytime soon.
No.
The Niti Aayog has, a working group of Niti Aayog has projected that even by 2047, our import dependence is going to continue.
One follow-up question for you, since the time you were, secretary in the Agriculture Ministry, what was being done for oil palm that time, and what was the situation then, and what is the situation now? And also, one more additional question would be, why government choose oil palm over other oils for the big push that is happening, or dedicated something like 11,000 crores for this program?
See, one reason, as I said in the beginning, is that the yield of edible oils from 1 hectare of land, if you take all the edible oils, then palm oil gives you a much higher yield, 3 to 4 times more yield than mustard, groundnut, or other edible oils. So that is one reason. The second reason is that there is a very good industry linkage between oil palm cultivation by the farmers and industry. Now, if that linkage can be established, because the bunches of oil palm, it is called FFB, the fruit bunch, that has to be processed within 2 days. So within 2 days, the bunch has to be transported from a farmer's field to a processing unit, and it has to be processed. Now, in coastal areas, a lot of investment, private investment has come by Godrej, Agrovet, and other companies, which has enabled this. And as a result of that, the farmers in Andhra Pradesh were able to get a very good price. In fact, in 2022, when the global prices had peaked, they were getting 23,000 rupees per ton. And now, to our dismay, the farmers are only getting 17,000, 18,000 rupees per ton. And one reason is that the government has permitted zero duty on imported crude palm oil.
Zero import duty. Okay, one follow-up question for you would be, quickly before I go to Ma'am Nilanjana Singh, would be say in the production of palm oil, because you said it's only 2 days, is the Ministry of Food Processing Industries, which used to run a food park program where they used to give viability gap funding for these food parks to come up. I think it started in the time of Suraj Nasen, Prasad Sinha, or maybe earlier. Could you share with the viewers that has any such food parks come up or in the processing for coming up all over India, where government will give viability gap funding for that to be set up?
See, there are some 40, 50 mega food parks which are coming up in different states of India. I have been Secretary of Food Processing, but I must say that most of the industries where palm oil is processed from the FFBs are not located in food parks. Food park scheme, has really not been very successful because the area was only 50 acres. So let us not link oil palm production or oil palm processing to the mega food parks. The industry is coming at locations which are closer to the areas where the oil palm is grown, so that it can be processed within 2-3 days.
Okay. I'll go to Ma'am Nilanjana Singh. Two things. When the government plans something for the population, it looks at things with great foresight. That's why the secretariat is the secretariat at Delhi, where they plan things for the next 15, 20, 25 years. When they chose oil palm as a product for the population of India to push and incentivize, two things I want to know. You shared information about the nutritional content. Also, if you could share that, say, in the long-term interest of India, which is the long-term interest of food security, why prioritizing this product, like the Prime Minister also said, is in the interest of India? If you could explain that a bit.
So we have many different kinds of nutritional problems in our country, and you can categorize them into 3. There is undernutrition, there is overnutrition, and there is micronutrient deficiency, about anemia, etc. So it's the undernutrition part which is also taking up half the numbers. Half the numbers are undernourished, especially children. And when we talk about food security, we want them to get their daily dose of calories, proteins, and micronutrients. And there was this interesting study which was done and reported in the Ghana Medical Journal, where they saw that when the inhabitants there shifted from the locally grown oil that was coconut and palm oil to expensive foreign oils. The shift came because there was some bad rap with palm oil. And when they did that, there was more communicable, non-communicable diseases like diabetes, etc. And actually the overall health and hunger, all of that came for a beating. So it is not just shifting towards something that's foreign, expensive, that is helpful. I think what we need to do is make sure that we get food at a reasonable price. And if you balance that out, I want to just say this, that we are living in these times where we sort of demonize foods or glorify them. This is so good while the other thing is so bad. All foods, usually we focus on plant-based foods, and you know that is the focus now, plant-based food. So when we balance it out and not just think about single nutrients, single foods, and you have a balanced thali where you can have palm oil because it also has good fatty acids like monounsaturated fatty acids, which is also there in olive oil. It might be a little less than olive oil, but if we get it at a more economical rate, why not? I mean, feed our children.
Are there any more byproducts to this oil, like other oils? Any other byproducts that come out?
Yes, there are many more that are used in the cosmetic industry, soap industry, etc. So all of that is being used. In fact, there are many fractions. So even for food, there are different fractions, which are the liquid form is used for a particular thing, the semi-solid form for certain bakery items. So there are fractions, different fractions, and I think there is very little waste. So all of that gets utilized. And like Mr. Siraj said, that the yield is so good per hectare. So that is something that food security is looking at.
Point very well taken. I go to Mr. Chaturvedi. As Mr. Chaturvedi, Mr. Siraj Hussain highlighted that even by 2047, it may be difficult to meet the oil demand from one. So Indian manufacturing is known to ramp up capacities very quickly. Despite that, if will not be able to meet demand, where are we lacking and what all we need to do so we can meet the demand as much as possible in India? Because you're a man of industry, if you could share with us, if we do these 10 things right, we will achieve our goal to be as self-dependent in oil palm cultivation as possible. If you could share some data points with the viewers.
No, forget the oil palm alone. Indian consumption story is actually now skyrocketing. Our consumption growth of edible oil is close to about 3 to 4% per annum. And when Siraj Saab said in the late 90s when India had actually become self-sufficient, it's a fact. But then Indian economy opened up and the disposable incomes went up and the consumption patterns changed. So our consumption kept growing, but the oilseed cultivation or palm cultivation, palm was not even heard of in the 2 decades back in the country. So all that has actually contributed to a situation where your dependence is now almost something like 16 to 16.5 million tons out of a total consumption of about 25 million tons. So, and it's going to keep growing. My only suggestion or request to the government over the years has been, if you can just bottle the inflows of imports to the current level, it would do a world of good. But that would mean that your own domestic production needs to go up by about 1 million ton annually. And this is the current increase. Anything between 800 to 900,000 tons is what our consumption growth annually is. And what better oil than palm oil? And palm oil, I think Siraj Bhai has also said that it is probably one of the best in terms of per hectare yields. And palm oil gives you something like 4 tons per hectare. There is no other oil which can give you that kind of. And I'll share with you another interesting statistics. which will tell you why palm needs to be promoted in our country big time. If you look at our total consumption basket, about 38% of that is palm. After the 25 million tons, roughly about 38% is palm. So mustard or soya in any case is much less oil bearing. Mustard is something which can definitely be pushed. But beyond a level, regional skews come into play. Palm, in terms of taste, is neutral. So palm is being consumed right across the country. And secondly, because this Andhra and all this region, wherever palm is being promoted, definitely is quite well balanced in terms of rains. So it can be a game changer. The government of India's target by 2030 is to have something like about 2.8 million tons of palm oil coming out of domestic. I think a lot of work still needs to be done because the current level of production of palm oil, or CPO as we call it, is only about 4.25 lakh tons. But what is also happening is, and this is important, whatever plantations have been done in the last couple of years, they will start giving fruit or bearing fruits in the next couple of years. So as we go forward, we will see palm oil's contribution growing big time. So that is something, yeah.
One thing I want to ask you further, you were saying that as the country becomes prosperous, the oil consumption goes up. So India is looking, say, now we are about 3.3 trillion. We are looking at $5 trillion economy. So whenever this happens, do you think the oil consumption will completely change? It will grow exponentially. So what we are looking at today, it will be much, much more, simply because people, as they get affluent, they start consuming. For a layman's example, somebody from having a normal biscuit will have a cookie or will have a croissant, all of this which needs oil as you go up the value chain.
Now let me share with you my own experience. I came into the edible oil sector about 4.5 decades back. At that time, Indian consumption used to hover around 7 to 7.5 kg per capita on an annualized basis. This number is now 17.5 to 18 kgs per capita. And that is how this 25 million ton number is coming. So obviously, and this is not the biggest in the world. In fact, our neighbors, Pakistan, the consumption level is something like 24 kilos per capita. Sri Lanka, which is almost 80% dependent on imports, there also the consumption level is much higher than, or closer to about 14, 15. So as the economy grows, obviously the role of edible oil in other processed food industry. Now, if you look at the namkeen industry in our country, which uses palm oil big time, so that is growing at more than 20%. Chocolates, confectionery, that is growing at almost 20%. And that all uses palm oil. So the palm oil, as the madam said, is probably one of the most versatile oils in the world. You cannot wish it away. And my only point which I thought I'll make is palm oil has been copying a lot of negative publicity from the Western world. My take is that is largely because palm, it's the biggest enemy of itself. It is such a successful product that it has spanned a whole lot of adversaries worldwide.
Because you mentioned, before I go to Mr. Siraj Hussain, a quick comment from Ma'am Nilanjana Singh. This question which I asked Mr. Chaturvedi, as people grow richer, does the oil consumption go up? Can you explain with the help of examples of what kind of foods people eat when they grow rich, which then consumes more oil, if you could explain to the viewer?
Yeah, absolutely. That's well established that as one gets richer, the consumption of oil, you have more of fried foods. You can afford to fry foods, and then you also have convenience foods which already have oil packed into it. So a lot of our food basket, when you get more wealthy, is convenience foods. And convenience foods love palm oil because it's so versatile, economic, and it's stable also. So all these factors make palm oil get into all of our convenience food. And there is this danger. We don't want people to be eating only convenience food. So I think that tightrope walking has to be done, where you have to make sure that you don't overdo that consumption. So I can talk about that later if you want.
Point very well taken. We'll go to Mr. Siraj and two things. As I read out, I find out that Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Kerala are the three major states where oil palm is being grown. Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Odisha, Gujarat, Mizoram also now growing increasingly more area under oil palm. And Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Manipur, Nagaland have initiated these programs. Given that as a fact, I want to ask you, is this 11,000 crore sufficient, or you would need much more push from the Secretariat at Delhi in the Agriculture Ministry so that we can aim to achieve a level of production that Mr. Chaturvedi was speaking about? If that is so, how much more money should the center give in your view so that our production ramps up quicker?
I think the current level of allocation is quite sufficient, because we do not know whether it is resulting in actual increase in production. Also, I would like to say that at one point of time, I had mentioned that several states included in the plan, basically were aspirational states. For example, UP, the document said that UP will also grow oil palm. Now, many areas of UP have been rain deficient in the last 2 years and so on. So for the time being, I think this allocation is good enough. The government should conduct concurrent evaluation of what is going on, whether the farmers are earning enough. For example, for this program, I spoke to some farmers, Atul Bhai, in Andhra Pradesh, and I was told that right now they are realizing some 13,700 rupees per ton. And they said that they should be getting at least 18,000 rupees per ton. Now, they did receive 23,000 rupees per ton 2 years back when the global prices had reached all-time high. So even in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, Mr. Nangia, your viewers may not recall, but Mr. Atul Chaturvedi surely recalls that farmers had taken off the oil palm cultivation.
Taken off?
Yes, it was taken off because it had become unprofitable. So it is up to the government to ensure that it remains profitable. And one more thing about Nilanjana, the more we continue to eat, edible oils, it is already 19 kg. The recommended quantity is 12 kg per year, not more than 1 kg per person. And this 19, is an average. The poorer population is consuming much less. Pakistan is a very wrong example. They eat too much of fried food. So I don't think we should be going in that direction. You see, the point is that the poorer sections of society need to consume more oil, but richer section of society, who come to Nilanjana, they should be eating a lot less.
Point very well taken. There's a bit of health advice there that eat right oil, but the less in amount. Too much of anything may be bad. I'll go to Ma'am Nilanjana for her intervention on this part.
Yes, you said it, Tarun, that too much of even a good thing is bad. And with palm oil, the section which needs it, which have a calorie deficit, is not eating it. They are not eating those foods that we are getting, and we are getting excess of that, and we are going into the other slot where we have non-communicable diseases and obesity as a problem. So I think for the more affluent, we need to focus on more fruits, vegetables, and for the other section, which is undernourished and has problems of not reaching up. There's a big gap in what they need and what they are getting. If palm oil can be introduced in a way without going over as an excess. That I think that balance is very hard to maintain. Either you go into overconsumption or you are under consuming it. So if we are able to maintain that, and that can be coming through better policies and more general awareness.
Okay, point well taken. I'll go to Mr. Chaturvedi. Now, taking on what Mr. Siraj Hussain shared with us, that farmers can first start to cultivate, but they can stop also. What incentivizing, in your view, needs to be done so that the farmers take this crop up? Because for them, as Mr. Hussain again said, that they are used to growing rice or wheat. For them to take up something which the government wants them to take up, how do you make them realize that this is a better crop for them to produce?
Well, I've been speaking on this subject for a very long time. In fact, our take is that the Indian oilseed farmer has been shortchanged over the years. And that is largely because the urban consumer has a much bigger voice. He can come on the channels of Mr. Tarun and speak against the inflation is hitting his pockets and blah, blah, blah. But the poor oilseed farmer doesn't have that kind of a voice. So at the drop of the hat, what happens is you put the import duties at zero. And if you really look at it, last year we were having our elections and all. So inflation and all that talk resulted in oilseed or imported oils coming at practically zero duty. So obviously, the farmer will definitely feel shortchanged. If he was getting 18,000 earlier for fresh fruit bunches, even if he's getting now 13,000, I think that itself is a reasonably good price. So the farmer needs to be incentivized, and that can only happen if we bite the bullet and ensure that the import duties are kept relatively high. And that alone is going to be the right signal for the oilseed farmer to cultivate much more. So at some stage, we'll have to bite the bullet.
Is this processed oil that you're speaking of, processed and packed to consume, ready to consume? Is that what you're speaking of, or bulk oil?
I'm talking of all oils, because bulk oil is not sold to the consumer. It has to be necessarily packed. Our statutory requirement is that you cannot. Only the bulk consumers, like the institutions and all, can buy oil in bulk. But as a consumer, you will have to necessarily buy in packed form. But all that is part of that scenario. If the edible oil prices are kept relatively high, it will be a suitable incentive. And whether we like it or not, the fact remains that you just cannot buy all the oil seeds, and including the fresh fruit bunches of palm, by the government under MSP. So you've got to ensure that the private sector chips in. And to ensure that the private sector chips in, you've got to keep the edible oil prices such that it enthuses the private sector also. If private sector is enthused, so would the farmer be. And it's high time, with their edible oil security so heavily compromised. Now almost 60% of our imports consumption is being taken care of by import. So that is something dangerous. In fact, you were talking about the Mahathir period. There we were also quite heavily involved in that. But subsequent to that, Indonesia put a ban on palm oil exports to India. And you know what happened? The prices of edible oil in our country went through the roof. And it became a big diplomatic row. So if palm is not promoted, or oilseed sector is not promoted, I'm sure you'll end up buying oil at 500 rupees a kilo.
Oh.
Yes. So better be prepared for that. And you've got to be, I think the policymakers will probably have to think that they have pampered the urban consumer far too much. And on the edible oil consumption, my simple saying is the world average is about close to 22 to 24 kgs. India is still around 17.5 to 18 kg. So it's still a long way to go. And in India, processed food consumption is growing, and that's where the edible oil usage actually grows as well. Yep.
Point very well taken. I'll take this to Mr. Siraj Hussain. See, for a safeguard duty to be put up, I think somebody like you in the ministry would have to discuss this, put it through cabinet, the commerce ministry will give their inputs. It takes a lot of time. If all that is to happen, do you think a safeguard duty or something of that we do for the steel sector, the aluminium sector, the government steps in and imports cross 50%? Unless you have a foreign trade agreement with the country, duties can be put. Could you share with the viewers what needs to be done? Do you think a safeguard duty for oil needs to be there so that Indian produce is promoted, or that is not required according to you?
No, there is no question of safeguard duty because our bound rates are much higher, which means that India can raise the duty to a much higher level. In fact, the duty was around 40% a few years back, 44% in 2018. Slowly, the duty has come down because of food inflation. So what I've been suggesting in my writings, and Mr. Chaturvedi is on TV channels every other day. You have invited him for the first time, but he is there on CNBC and Z every day. So what needs to happen is that an empowered group of ministers should meet every week and calibrate the duty structure so that the landed price of oil is such that the domestic MSP of mustard, soybean, etc. is protected. The whole concept is that the government should protect the domestic MSP, which was not done. Even this year, the mustard prices in mandis at the time of peak arrivals were lower than the MSP. Niranjan, it must all be very boring for you.
It's very interesting because I'm getting to know new facets, and I know that as nutritionists, and even up till now, we work in silos. We just talk about the human body, how the fat is being metabolized. But it's so important to know what's happening on our planet and how agricultural produce. So I'm glad that I'm listening to such wise people here on this show. Thank you.
So, Mr. Hussain, when you said about MSP, what is the MSP that you would suggest with your studies for oil palm or these growers? What is the 18,000 is what you said in your last answer?
No, there is already a formula given in the oil palm policy. It is linked to international prices. The government has done well to raise the price. So that part is already well taken care of at the moment. What we are saying is that the prices of all oilseed crops need to be protected. The MSP for all crops need to be protected by raising the import duty suitably. If the global prices are too low, the duty should be higher. In fact, Mr. Chaturvedi was not there. He was in Sri Lanka that day. The IVPA has suggested a duty structure to the government, which is now available with the government, a dynamic duty structure.
Okay, a dynamic duty structure is being suggested. Would Mr. Chaturvedi want to come in for a minute before I go to Ma'am Nilanjana Singh?
What we've been telling the government is that you cannot possibly buy all the oil seed which is coming into the marketplace. So necessarily, you will have to ensure that the prices of oils are maintained at such a level that whatever MSP you are saying is protected. Now, if you look at the mustard scenario, Government of India has ended up procuring something like 26 or 27 lakh tons of mustard. So that mustard has gone into godowns and it's gone into warehouses and it's not available for crushing. It will be available for crushing at some stage in future, but the material has actually been sucked out of the system. So if you had just had the prices or the import duties, which would have ensured that the mustard actually sells at the minimum support prices, then government need not have purchased such a huge quantity. And it doesn't make sense. So it's important that we need to create the ecosystem which ensures that whatever MSP has been declared should be protected by the market, not by government intervention.
So I think the market should decide is what Mr. Chaturvedi says. We're almost out of time on this one, I have been told, but I would like to thank each one of you, Mr. Siraj Hussain, Mr. Atul Chaturvedi, Ma'am Nilanjana Singh, that you came on the show, explained various facets about oil palm, also explained government's decision to pump in 11,000 crores, also focus on Northeast, need for more subsidy, important points like MSP. Mr. Siraj Hussain highlighted the need for a MSP, also about the issue of duty. It was an interesting discussion in the interest of India's food security and the government's national edible oil program. On the next show on this topic, we will get to discuss a lot more. That would be in a couple of months from now. I think a lot of developments would have happened till then, which we would get to cover. But thank you for joining me on this one. Appreciate your time. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.